You're changing the date of the rest of the hearing. That's huge. We don't do that in City Hall recently. We haven't in 3 years. Anyway, I'm here mostly because this is our right to grow our own food. This isn't even about chickens and all that. I want to be able to be self-sufficient if I want to. I want to be able to fish and not have to pay for a fishing license. I want to grow chickens and I want to have eggs. I don't kill anything, so I don't know if I could eat the chickens, but you know, people do. This is about a commoner being able to be self-sufficient. That's why I'm here, and I hope you consider that through this whole thing. We don't need more regulations. I agree with what they were saying, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Carson Ryan, 15 Highland Street. My chickens bring my kids joy.
Chicken love.
I don't care if they give me eggs and I can sell them, or if they hang out on my back deck for sweet bugs, aka raisins. I don't care. I don't care if it costs me more in raisins and food than I'll ever get out of them. Truly, they bring me joy. They make me happy. They give me a little piece of living on a farm in a city that's building windmills and cutting out fishing and all the things. I mean, we've had chickens for 400 years and we've all lived peacefully. Let's talk about the coyotes. They've carried away 5 of my chickens, 2 of my dogs, 3 of my cats. Chickens bring me joy. Coyotes don't. They keep my husband alive, the chickens do. They listen to me. I know, I'm speaking for every single chicken owner in the room. We can go over the logistics, but they make me happy. And the $50 fee, I don't care. I want to have 10 if my chickens are happy and they make me happy and my space is big enough. And I'm a 47-year-old tax-paying voting woman and have given birth twice and can decide if my chickens have enough room because I love them. And that's it.
Anyone else who wishes to speak?
I'd like to say My name's John Francis. I live at 383 Magnolia Ave. Had chickens for 8 years at that house. I've never had a complaint. We do have 3 roosters. They're bantam roosters. They're small. 2 of them, my daughter, who's right here, raised them since they were 2 days old. She's very attached to them. Maybe you saw her in the newspaper recently. She was at the blessing of the animals at Lady of Good Voyage Church. And, you know, we've never had a complaint. So I don't know, my chickens are small. I had 2 neighbors that are close. I mean, with train tracks behind our house. I don't know if you're familiar with a train, but it's a lot louder than a chicken. And you know, I live on Magnolia Ave, so the trash trucks, they start going by at 2:30 a.m. I hear them. I mean, I don't know, I don't complain about them. The trash trucks, they gotta do something. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
I did when I was in back.
Go ahead.
You did.
You're there.
Yes, you did.
We have plenty of time yet.
Thank you. I'm Josh Ulrich. I live on 7 Grandview Road here in town. I'm grateful for all the turnout and the comments that have been heard already. I had a lot of things I was going to say, but they've all been said. The only thing I wanted to point out is I think something went drastically wrong with the decision-making process that has brought us to this point right here. If this is just a matter of a neighbor dispute, and there were chickens involved, I don't understand why somebody went through the trouble to consider a plan where you would infringe upon my property. The house where I pay taxes that I bought on my own, the chickens that I paid taxes for and bought on my own, at my house with my family doing what I do, and then suddenly there's been people within the government here who have considered it a legitimate option to come in and tax that. For what end, I don't understand. Who involved with the tax and regulate it. It's not yours to mess with. And I think that the problem that happened here, although I think everybody's well-intended, is you assume that your role is much bigger than it really is. The proper thing to do with something that only affects maybe a few people is to head it off at the pass. Maybe if Melissa Cox was the one who brought this forward and it was one neighbor dispute, perhaps a better way to have handled it would have said, Melissa, you need to go back and work on this neighbor dispute. Call the police department, see if somebody come out there if you need them to intermediate. But this is not something that we pass a new law for and broad brush a whole bunch of law-abiding people that have animals and care for them responsibly in order to solve some problem because somebody who's getting paid and has a position to deal with these problems doesn't either have the courage or the thought to go ahead and get involved and deal with that problem at the lowest level. This is the wrong forum for this. And it bothers me that all these people felt compelled to come here and spend their night here to talk about this. It's far bigger than chickens. I mean, that seems to be what we're talking about. But suppose that I had a problem with my neighbor using chemical fertilizer on their lawn. I find that more destructive than any of these chickens or any of their waste. Suppose that members of the community decided that they had a right to come in and tax what I produce in my garden, my cucumbers and tomatoes and so forth. I think you would all agree, and even people who don't have chickens would find that very offensive. This is something this is not handled the way it should have been handled. I'm grateful for the chance to talk about it, but we were wrong to go ahead and look at a model in Somerville and see if we should apply it, given the fact pattern that we're dealing with right here. And I think that we need to really think this stuff through better in the future on these types of issues. But thank you very much. I apologize, I didn't intend to cut you. I just didn't see your hand up. Thank you.
Do we know, is Melissa Cox still here?
My name's Don Landegren, I live on P Ave.
The chicken.
And I just wanted to say that I was the victim of a chicken complaint 55 years ago. The lady didn't like the 4 roosters that we had down near her land. She was not in the butter, but close to the butter. And so I really don't know whether it was the policeman that did it or whether my father decided, but we were told to move the chickens up closer to the house. And 2 days later, the lady unfortunately learned that the chickens were down on the level of the bedroom of her house. And she said, just move them back down. But it was resolved that way. It didn't require boards. It didn't require discussions like this. It was 2 neighbors or almost neighbors deciding and working it out for themselves. I see no reason for that not to continue. And when Max said that you have people coming in wanting to know about chickens, it's a lot easier to say we don't have regulations on chickens than it is to
Develop
give things very slowly. Thank you.
Patty Page, 3 Title Cove Way. I do not have chickens, but I am interested in the issue. I have them in my family in West Gloucester. I would like to ask, I have talked to Noreen about this. When people come forward with some kind of issue, I spend a lot of time at public meetings, a lot of time, having to testify, having to speak to boards about different things. I would request that issues not come through counselors particularly. It's appropriate to contact your counselor for something and get their advice. I would like to see a written complaint or issue or an oral communication someplace so we know the scope and nature of what we're dealing with. And I think it's incumbent, if someone has an issue, that they come forward themselves with the issue. This telephone chain of what happened, what was reported, isn't really sufficient. I've heard different things here tonight. I've heard different things on the street, what this complaint was about. Max Shank has said it was a noise complaint?
No.
Okay, do we have someplace in writing the scope of what we're dealing with?
It's
Oh,
an
can-
email.
Yes, we do.
Can we make that public at some point?
I don't think that that's relevant to this discussion. Max has
This is where it stemmed from.
Can I speak, please?
Sure.
I don't think that's relevant to this issue because, as Max has already said, there have been multiple complaints, 5 or 6 a year.
No, he didn't say 5 or 6
Over
year
400
complaints
years.
a year. He said,
It's not
he didn't
bad.
say 5 or 6 complaints a year. He said 5 or
Yes, I
6
did.
inquiries a year.
No, I said 5 or 6 complaints a year, as well as many people coming into the
What are
department.
the
That's
complaints?
not,
Asking.
that's not the parse the language.
What are the list
So-
of complaints?
But
You don't
those
know.
kinds of issues come before this board, and this board decides occasionally that this ought to be considered so that people can have a redress. I mean, I, and I think I can speak for the board, none of us want to accrete more rules and regulations. All of us agree with, as eloquently has been said here, that we generate too many rules and regulations. But, on the other hand, that has to be balanced with the fact that some people are offended by some things, not just chickens, but by smoking or what have you. A lot of people would say, I want to have the freedom to smoke. I want to be able to kill myself if I want to. Other people say, I don't want to breathe or smoke. And so there are regulations that evolve out of that. The same kind of things come from this issue. And so we have begun the consideration of this issue. It by no means has been concluded. We shouldn't be talking about Melissa Cox as the culprit here. She wasn't the culprit. She was the last instigating event, I suppose. But we should be blaming her for this issue.
She brought it up, she should be here listening to the people.
That's a
Well,
good.
perhaps. We may
Yeah.
well have a
Later,
bit
there's
more.
one with 5 in here.
Could I ask one?
So, while I agree with virtually all the sentiments put here, there is the other side of the issue that this board has to consider, and that is, are there legitimate complaints that some citizens may have with this particular issue that are within the purview of the Board of Health? We haven't decided that yet, but it's a worthwhile thing for us to consider.
I understand that. When the complaints come into the Board of Health, do they then become matter of public record? Okay, so we can go and approach the agent and ask for complaints within the last year, 2 years, find out exactly what the nature is. I'm not particularly interested in who filed them, but we can actually find out what precipitated this action and move forward with the ad hoc committee on that?
Yeah, I don't see the connection between the two, but yeah.
Well, we're all-
We're asking, why are we here?
We're choosing this, we're choosing
What
this.
you're- hold on a
Just
second,
wanna
folks,
know the
please.
scope of the
What I'm
issue.
hearing
Yeah.
is, one, do you have a public right to see the records from the health department on certain complaints? The answer is yes.
Right.
Can you use those, and I think this is the point you're getting to, forgive me for not understanding the way you put it, but can you use those as information for an ad hoc committee that's formed?
I would think that would be
Yeah,
pertinent
okay,
to the
that's, yeah,
committee.
yeah, okay.
Right.
So forgive me, I misunderstood how you put it.
I'm just trying to define the scope and nature of
Right.
the complaint present and maybe within the last year or two. Thank you.
Okay, it's a little after 7. I'd like to just sum up. Again, first of all, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. We really appreciate your input. I would also like to just reiterate one thing that Joe touched on. I believe that everyone here who has chickens are responsible chicken owners. But there are probably in the town people who did not show up who are irresponsible chicken owners. And those are the people that we need to address. And unfortunately, the regulations that address those issues may impact upon some of the responsible chicken owners. I suspect nobody here has a problem with rats due to chicken waste. There may be people in town that do. You might feel differently if you live next door to somebody who had that situation. I know your grandfather. Their neighbor, he's a neighbor of mine. I've been to the farm. I've helped pick grapes, so I know he does a good job. But I just don't know if everyone in town does that, and those are the issues that we have to look at. So again, we're going to be having the meeting on December 4th. We will make this one of the first items on the agenda, so no one has to stay real late. if you're interested in being considered for this ad hoc committee, and again, we'll have to make some decisions, but we're gonna try hard to get stakeholders from every possible community we can. There are cards, please give them to Max over here, and we will make those considerations. So again, I want to thank everyone for coming, we really appreciate your input.
Thank you.
And
Thank
we'll
you.
take a 5-minute break, just so everyone can orderly